legalization in Colorado, in-game wagering, and shopping lines. All things you will hear on today's episode of Beat the Bookie podcast. I am Season Long Says at Alan Seslowski of DFS Army, joined as always by my friend John Alesia. How are you over there, John?
Yeah, good, man. Good. Hanging in there.
All right. I know that offline you were just telling us about a crazy contractor disaster. I'll just add that to the list of people who've had that as well. So thank you for joining us. If I see veins popping out of your neck with anger, I'll certainly understand.
This is my release, man. This is when I feel good. Right after I hang up here, then it gets back to the stress.
And look who's joining us in the southern window. Ryan Besch, a.k.a. Fight On. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Alan. How are you?
Did you got to hear a glimpse of John's story there? I mean, it is unbelievable.
It is a crazy story. Yeah, my parents just finished building their house, their retirement house, and it took them, I think, 2 years extra to build a house. So I am not a part of the build or flip or renovate. It just seems to always go south.
Right. Until you hit that one big jackpot and you flip the house, which maybe, hey, what a good segue into a sports wagering discussion. So for those of you who are listening for the first time, this is the new DFS Army Beat the Bookie podcast. This is a look into the Beat the Bookie VIP section of DFS Army, our fastest growing section. There seems to be a lot of interest in sports wagering, and what better than to have on our two top-notch experts at DFS Army. And first, guys, let's talk current news. We're recording this. A lot of these podcasts we like to have is evergreen that you can listen a year from now and it's still relevant. But I still think it's important to talk about current news. Today, in mid-November of 2019, Colorado with a big win. John, tell us a little bit about what happened on the Colorado legalization bill.
Yeah, from what I understand, it was a very narrow victory on the elections were Tuesday, I believe. And yeah, it was a narrow victory. And I think it's just one of many of the dominoes that are going to start falling here as we go across the country with the legalization of sports betting. We've seen, I want to say there's maybe 13 states now, 14 states that have some form of legalized sports betting. Eventually, the odds are pretty good that the state you live in, if it does not have it now, will have it. And just my whole take on legalized sports betting, it drives me crazy when New Jersey was fighting this, and New Jersey was the first one to really take this to court. You saw the leagues, the major leagues, the NFL, MLB, NBA sort of came out on the side of sports betting at some point in there. But when they make the case that there's going to be, and the NCAA was another one where they make the case that, well, this is going to it's going to tarnish the game. There's going to be the ability or the possibility that someone is going to try to fix games or something like that. That ability was there all along. All legalized sports betting does is actually limit the amount of nefarious activity that could possibly go on. Reason being is the way they catch a lot of these games, and you heard my story about when I lost. When I was sort of third or fourth hand getting that information on those fixed games, but the way they actually catch these guys is through the legal means, because when a sportsbook has absolutely no interest in booking bets that are fixed, because obviously that goes against them, and the sports bettors in general don't want fixed games, right? So when it's legal, the legal sportsbook has recourse. They go to the FBI and they say, hey, we're seeing some unusual activity here. Like there are bets that are unusual. Have a look. And the FBI has a division that will look at these games, and they know kind of what to look at and what fixing a game looks like. And they'll put together a case, and that's how they come down on it. When you're the illegal sportsbook, who are you going to call? You're going to call your local cops and say, hey, listen, I'm the corner bookie, and this guy's been putting big bets in on whatever college basketball game. I think the game's a fix. Can't do it. So when you legalize it, you actually make the sports more secure.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's whoever's campaigning against legalization and uses that argument at the time, and you just kind of totally debunk that. Ryan, why do you think that it's taking this long? Is this just like another thing? Like in the first part of the 1900s, it was booze, and now it's weed and sports wagering. What is holding back the states that haven't done this yet, in your opinion?
I think there are many reasons why. One reason is obviously courts or legislations in states are only in session for basically the summer months. So you're only have a certain window every year to put something on the ballot for your state Congress and your state Senate to agree upon it, and for it to go to a vote then. And that happens, depends on your state. Your state can pass it in the state, but also it can go to the voters, such like it did in Colorado. But yeah, it's going to take slower than we expect. As soon as you see kind of the big ones start to fall, so as soon as we get California, as soon as we get New York, then the smaller states around are going to have to compete for revenue. And you kind of saw that when Indiana passed, kind of it forced Illinois' hand. And yeah, I think it's a little slower, but I think one interesting thing is that you see when you look at a state map, for instance, Colorado, and why it was so narrow was the conservative vote in the rural areas didn't want it. And that kind of intrigued me with kind of the idea of ideological positions that they would be against it. So anyway, that was a fun little tidbit. But
John, I'm just curious, like, because Ryan just hit on something, like the conservative vote is always okay. They were anti-booze, they were drugs. There's and you can argue the morality of those. Why is sports wagering a morality issue? Like, if someone wants to enjoy a contest by having stake in the game and having further interest, why is that a moral issue?
Well, from my standpoint, obviously it's not.
Right, but I'm saying,
I find it very hypocritical, at least in New York. If you grew up in New York City, in Brooklyn, right? Where I grew up, the only place that you could legally bet on anything was at the racetrack, right? So you could bet on the horses. You could bet the lottery, which is probably, forget the main lottery, the big lottery for the millions of dollars. The pick 3 and the pick 4 number has the biggest vig. We talk about vig and juice. It's a 50% take, right? You're talking about sports betting. They're taking, generally the 10% vig. This is a 50% vig that they take on the pick 3 and the pick 4. And that money is supposedly to go to, we have no money for education, but all that money that's being pumped in that they sold us on, this is going towards education. Where's the money going? That's one. And it's actually criminal what they do, because the people who play these pick 3, pick 4, the lottery, and they play for a lot of money. I know as a kid, my sister worked at one of those corner stores where they would sell the lottery.
Oh yeah.
And you grow up in the neighborhood and a lot of these people. I didn't grow up in a neighborhood where people had a lot of money, and people were playing $100 a day in just those in lottery tickets. It's insanity. Scratch offs, Keno that they have so one, they want to talk about morality with the government, yet they're perfectly fine doing that, and it's really a tax on the poor people. But the other way that you could legally play and gamble in New York was at the yeshivas and the churches. You can legally play bingo at these places of worship, because gambling is no good. It's very bad for you unless the church and the yeshiva are making money doing it.
Right.
So
right.
It's a big hypocritical stance. I think as we start to evolve and progress here, we're seeing those dominoes fall, like I said, and eventually with the weed and with gambling, we're going to see more and more states adhere to it.
No morality issues here for the three of us. My two experts that I'm joined with is Statsational on Twitter, John Alesia, and Ryan Besch, of course. Fight On. Ryan, are you on Twitter as well, right? It's Fight On Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, I don't do social media. I'm not a classic millennial, so I'm probably not the person to follow on Twitter.
Yeah, that's an interesting take, because I would think millennial and social media, that you're born on Instagram. So
yeah, we basically were, but I spend all of my time helping our members in Slack, so I don't have time to go to Twitter and Facebook.
What a company guy! I love this guy. What an employee! All right, guys. So morality aside, congratulations to those in Colorado. That's amazing. Hopefully, we'll get some Colorado listeners who've been watching this podcast join up for to beat the bookie, but let's tell them what we're really here, and that is to clear up a lot of confusion, and myself included. Now, I've been a sports wagerer for a long time, and so I don't consider myself a novice, but I'm certainly not an expert. But the one thing that always, when I look at the odds in game, this is something that I need a little clarification on. In-game wagering. I'm going to go to each of you. John, start us off. Tell us just the basics. Halftime wagering, in-game at commercials. Just clear it up, because I don't know if I'm supposed to count the score that's already happened. Is it the score from that point forward? Clear it up for me.
Okay, well, there actually is there's a couple of different bets. Usually the most common in-game bet is going to be like a halftime bet, NFL or NBA, college basketball, things like that. And that's going to be from that point on, typically. So you may get a game where the favorite was 7-point favorite. They're now winning the game by 20 points or something like that. And they'll make them, a 3-point favorite for the second half. So you're looking at the second half.
I want to stop you right there. So if, let's say there was a 7-point, we always use the Dallas and the Giants. All right. So it was 7. Now Dallas scores. So Dallas is favored by 7. They score a field goal. Okay. So now they go to commercial break and the line is just say 4. So it's 0-0 again in your bet.
Right. There could be 2 ways to do that. So if they have 4, like a lot of the in-game betting, I don't do a lot of in-game betting, but a lot of the in-game betting, when you're doing it as like during commercial breaks, will be you're actually betting on the full game line. Then they have what they'll call a second half bet. And that would be a totally separate bet. So you're betting on just the second half of the game. So you could have live in-game betting where the line is actually moving, and that's a full game line. And then you could have a second half bet where, again, like I said, you're just playing the second half of that game. And then you can obviously extrapolate that over what the line would be for a full game, and what the score needs to be for you to cover that in a full game.
All right. So Ryan, here's the question for you. When you're talking about second half wagering, we'll just start with that. Forget the in-game wagering for a minute, because I don't want to confuse anyone listening for the first time. Is there a different strategy? I mean, do you have to kind of observe the first half to see how the game went, or is it just a numbers algorithm? Talk about any sort of strategy that you would imply for second half wagering.
Yeah, so I'm probably not the person to come to on this question, because I create models and quantitative models to predict full game spreads. And what they don't do is create second half spreads. So I have taken kind of a really conservative stance when I create my models to focus on focusing on the full game aspect. However, I would say that watching a first half, and especially in a sport, and you can see, so for instance, in football, if let's say a team is driving the ball, getting to the other team's 40, getting to the other team's 30, and turning the ball over, and a fumbles are in football, they're extremely random. You should be net 0 after every season, but you're sometimes lucky or sometimes unlucky. And if it happens in game, so for instance, when we looked at the Notre Dame Virginia Tech game last weekend, they had a fumble return for 99 yards, Virginia Tech did, against Notre Dame. But Virginia Tech had no shot in that game. So if that game had continued for another 30 minutes, I would have piled on to Notre Dame because they were clearly the better team there. So I would look at kind of pace stats. And the other thing I would say is when you have a line, so let's say Giants and Cowboys, the original line is -7. Cowboys come in at halftime, they're up 3, and the second half line becomes, Dallas -3. And so you have kind of Vegas wanting to take on more Dallas money because they have it at -3. The second half is -3. And so they just want to trap people into saying, oh, it was -7 before, now I can get -6 basically. And that's when Vegas thinks that the Giants are actually the better bet, but they want to make people bet the Cowboys.
Okay, so what Ryan just said is pretty interesting to me, John, and he's talking about that there's hidden value. Do you find that in second half lines there's more value to be squeezed because most people don't fully understand what they're looking at, and self included, when you talk about a second half line?
I actually think, and I think Ryan's last point was spot on. You have to really be careful there with when you take that second half line and then project it out to what the original line was based on what the score. And in his example, now Dallas is only laying 6. You have to be really careful because, like he said, they're trying to suck you in a lot of times on that bet. Like, hey, I could have got this game at -7. Now I get it at -6. I'm picking up a whole point. There's a reason for that, and their models are generally going to be better they're going to be better than 99% of the public on these things, and especially second half because, like Ryan said, I'm very similar to Ryan in the fact that most of the stuff, 99% of what I do is going to be based on full game. There are people out there who are really good at in-game, but they are very rare. I just want to say this when it comes to in-game betting and second half betting, what I see most of the time, again, high percentage, 95+% of the time when I get questions about this is you bet a game, the team is winning pretty big at the half, and you can't wait to get out of that bet because you just want to lock in a profit, right? That is not the way you do this.
Oh, you're saying that you lose instant value. You're
losing the VIG. We talked about EV last week, okay? All you have to do is a simple EV calculation. Now, when I talk about every bet that you make in sports is negative EV unless you've got Ryan's model that's been proven to be successful. You're taking, my NFL games, wherever it is, where over time they've been successful. So now you have a little bit of an edge. Maybe you have a model of your own. That's different. That's what we're trying to do is flip the EV from negative to positive in our favor. When you do that, you're playing one of Ryan's college football games today, okay? And it's a blowout. You're winning big at the half. And then I'll have people come to me and say, hey, the second half line is such and such. I can get out of this bet right now and just take the cap. Well, why? Right? If you take that over the course of the season, you're going to be leaving cash on the table. You're going to be losing money by doing this. It's very hard to win in sports betting, and you're making it even more difficult. You're going to lose on every $100 you bet. If it's just picking blindly, you're going to lose a little under $5 a bet. Same thing's going to happen in the second half. So now you've got a model that's successful. You're winning with it, and what you're going to now do is pay $5 back to the house on every 100. Just so you can have that secure feeling of, hey, I won this bet. I don't even have to watch the second half because I won money. I see this in poker. I've got buddies in poker, right? You've got, we play in our little home game or whatever. Pocket aces, you're playing $1 home game. Pocket aces, the bet goes, someone raises it to $7 and they make it $50. And I go, okay, great. And they're like, hey, well, I won. I go, all right, well, you won the pot, you won $7, right, but you didn't maximize what you were winning. And on the long haul, when you do that, they don't realize that you're losing money. If I don't capitalize on the times to have aces and kings, well, how am I going to make any money in the game if I just take down the blinds in those situations? Same thing here. I've got the nuts. Ryan gave me a game. It's up 3 touchdowns. Let it play out. All right. On occasion, you're going to get a bad beat and it's going to lose. But
Atlanta Falcons Patriots Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. I actually had the Patriots, so that one worked out for me. But yes, exactly. You don't want to. They call it like Well, I'm going to hedge. And the other one, and I'm sorry to monopolize the time, but the other
no. Guys, just so you know, this is your time. This is interesting stuff. Like the comments are already coming in. I see them. People want to hear this stuff, so don't just expound on it. I'm literally sitting here, ears open.
Okay, here's the one that drives me the most crazy. You put in a 14 parlay. Right? Again, it's college football. I've got 3 12 o'clock games. They all win. I've got my last game's at 7 o'clock tonight. It's the last leg of my parlay. I will get the question a million times. Hey, John, should I bet the other side of that game to guarantee myself? And I said, but why did you play a 14 parlay? Right. You could have just played the first 3 teams, and you would have made more money doing that. So you're actually making less by hedging out of that bet. Because you're now giving back you're giving more juice. You're paying juice. Just remember, like I said, every bet you make, you're paying juice on. The more bets you make, the more juice you pay. Without having a system telling you, hey, we could flip this juice into our favor and make some money on it, then you are losing every time you bet. So anytime you're hedging, I hate it. I hate the hedging. I hate futures
Yeah.
bets. Hey, I bet the Falcons to win the Super Bowl. Now they're in the championship game. Hey, John, should I bet against them? Well, then you should have just bet them to get to where they are now. Like
I'm guilty of this.
Everyone does it because you want to win. It's not the money. It's winning is more important.
Correct.
Like actually losing hurts more than winning feels good, and that's just 98% of the population.
It's the wrong mindset. It's the
total wrong mindset. Can I give a quick from the scorecasting book? I've talked about scorecasting book in the Slack chat. It's a great book.
Read it. It's a book, like a reading.
It's a book. It's a book. The guys, if you're familiar with Freakonomics, it's one of the guys from the Freakonomics wrote scorecasting. And so if you look at, they gave several examples of this on how losing changes our psychology. Okay, so in the PGA, 10-foot putts in the PGA. Now, a 10-foot putt is a 10-foot putt. No matter what you're putting for, right? If you're putting for birdie, par, or bogey, you would assume that the golfer is going to make the exact same percentage of all of those putts. It doesn't actually work that way. Do you know which putts they make more? Do they make more 10-foot birdie putts or 10-foot putts for par or 10-foot putts for birdie? Would you know which ones they make?
It's got to be the par because it's less pressure.
No, it is par,
which
is correct. But the reason behind it is bogeys are losses in a golfer's mind. Even though a stroke is a stroke, we're counting strokes over 18 holes, not just one hole, right? They don't ask you how many birdies you made and how many bogeys you made. They just ask you how many strokes it took you to get home. So when you have the situation where the guy's got a 10-foot putt for par, he feels like he's at a loss. Like 10-foot putt for par is already he's already in a loss situation because he's only going to make 50% of those putts. If he's got 10-foot for birdie, he won already. Like he's safely in at par. He's going to make, at worst, he's going to 2-putt it. So he's going to be more cautious. They're more aggressive on the 10-foot par putt because they don't want to make a bogey. So he's going to be aggressive, or she are going to be more aggressive on that putt. It happens in baseball, 3-0 count that goes to a 3-2 count. The pitcher actually has an advantage when it's 3-0 and goes to 3-2 as opposed to 0-2 and goes to 3-2. Same logic. They feel like it was a loss, and when you're at a loss, you have nothing to lose, and you become more aggressive. When you have a win in your mind banked, you become more conservative.
That's interesting, and I think that's why so many, sports psychology is a growing field. It's sometimes these, with a pitcher or a basketball player, they go into a slump, and I've heard a lot of these guys being more open to psychotherapy to get out of that slump. That's pretty interesting. Ryan, yeah, that really is eye opening. So I think that we can apply that same philosophy to sports wagering. So Ryan, just to kind of close out in-game wagering. Mm-hmm. Is there any? Do you recommend this as a practice, or I know you said your modeling is based on full game. Talk about the psychology of somebody. Why somebody may do that? Then, like, what's the biggest reason that people come to you as an expert and say, "Hey, should I take the second half?" Or as John talked about, hedging being non-optimal. What's the reason that people come to you, and what kind of advice would you give back to them?
They just want more action.
So they're adrenaline junkies.
I wouldn't say junkies. I think we're all junkies because we all want action at the end of the day.
Term of endearment. When we could talk about junkies when we're amongst friends here. If you're watching our sports wagering podcast, you're one of us.
So I would say that you should stick to your investment thesis. So I come from a finance background. We come with investment theses for every investment we make. And if your investment thesis, so if you think of a second half wager, so first half ends, you have 15 minutes to decide what you want to do, and the line is moving like this because everyone is trying to figure out what the best line is. And you have 15 minutes to figure out what you think or what the numbers say is the best line. Now consider the full game where on an NFL Sunday, you have a week to figure out where the best line is. So unless you are extremely confident and you watch the game, and then even then you play emotional biases against yourself of, oh, that was just a bad pass. Oh, he dropped it. Oh, whatever. Those
Are you in my living room? Are you in my living room? This sounds like me on a typical Sunday. Get out of my brain.
It's me on a typical any day. I play that. Kentucky and Eastern Kentucky played yesterday. Just watch it, and Kentucky obviously is bigger, faster, stronger than everyone on the court. but they were up 12 with 2 minutes left to go in the first half. And it's just like, how? But they actually won by like 45. So it was fine. But yeah, you play these games with yourself. And one of these, my biggest thing in betting, especially for NFL, is going against the typical bettor and playing a contrarian angle, because people like recency bias. They like to think what happened last week is going to happen again. And they want to think what's happening in the first half is going to happen again, or something bad just happened, so it's going to be the opposite. Instead of focusing on the real numbers, they focus on what their emotions tell them, and it's always going to be negative EV.
You and I, Ryan, had a text conversation yesterday, and we were saying, I asked you about a basic principle of betting, and I just needed to hear it from an expert. It was bet the number, not the teams. So, John had originally put that thought in my head, and I just wanted to kind of run it by you. And it's nice when all of the chips align. Hey guys, I just want to take a second here. If you're enjoying this content, make sure you like, subscribe to our YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Just ring the bell on the YouTube channel and you'll get alerts when we go live. Also, if you go to DFS Army right now and click the Beat the Bookie tab, use promo code BTB, you can sign up and unlock all of John and Ryan's premium content. Here's a little screenshot of what it looks like. You'll just go to DFS Army, and then the top right corner where your account is, just click on that Beat the Bookie tab, and right away it'll bring you to the Beat the Bookie site, and you could sign up with promo code BTB and get, was it 20% off, guys?
20% off.
Yeah, this is, I don't like to do too much of a commercial in here, but these, as a more than casual sports bettor, these are the guys that I defer to, and that's how I started hosting the podcast with them. I was a fan of their work first, and then said, hey, let's talk to the people. I think other people can benefit from this information. They don't just give you picks. I want, John, just talk about it a little bit. I say it every week, but yes, you do give out picks, but it's your process, your mastery of teaching. Talk a little bit about your passion for teaching and how that, when someone goes and signs up for Beat the Bookie at dfsarmy.com, talk about why they should go do that with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually the least favorite thing I do is give out picks. I mean, I love to see people win. We had a bunch of winners thanks to Ryan last night. Guys did tremendously with his college basketball stuff. So that's always fun when people post how well they're doing. But I love the stuff where it's like yesterday, I spent a whole bunch of time working on an article for buying points in basketball, right? So I love that stuff. I love digging in, and it reinforces. Sometimes it reinforces the ideas that I had years ago, and I haven't had a chance to go back and look at it. And sometimes I go, wait a second, I was actually wrong there. So it helps me helping. When I'm helping other people, it helps me because it forces me to back what I'm saying and give you some of the math behind what it is I'm saying. So hopefully, in my doing that, it's helping other people learn a little bit and become better sports bettors.
Great. Yeah, that's an awesome idea. And what's great is when you sign up for Beat the Bookie, I'm just going to show it again. You can go to dfsarmy.com and click on the Beat the Bookie tab in the upper right-hand corner. For those of you listening on the audio feed, you can't see this, but I put up a screenshot of how you do it. Just click on Beat the Bookie and use the code BTB, and you get 20% off. What's great about Ryan as well is you answer these. I'm watching you in the Slack room that you get from becoming a Beat the Bookie member. Somebody asks a question. It's like almost that some sort of alert goes off and you're literally answering them within seconds. How do you have they talk about the tremendous access you have to you and John and the coaches if you become a Beat the Bookie member?
Well, as a millennial, I'm addicted to my phone. So I always have my phone on me, and I'm always checking Slack every 5 minutes. So I think that we truly are unparamount in the amount of access you have to betting experts, to betting models. I think one thing that you'll rarely find in this industry is someone who is willing to post the exact point total that a model puts out. So you could see my college basketball model for today. You could see exactly how many points I have, for instance, Texas Tech scoring. That is unheard of in the industry.
And why is that important? Talk about why that's important.
It's important because it can help you understand the story. So, for instance, if last night, Kentucky, my model had them favored by 38, having them scoring 92 points, it could tell the story. rather than just give the pick. If
Right.
you give out Kentucky minus 28 or minus 29, what's that telling you? Does he think they're going to win by 32? Does he think they're going to win by 40? How do I vary how confident I am or his model is in that pick? But having kind of full access to the entire model and full access to experts like John, like myself, like Anthony as well, really is, I think, at the price that we charge, is truly the best value in the industry.
Right. And, that's interesting, John. And because often when, I mean, who's not going to look at your picks? What I do is I make my own lines just anecdotally without a spreadsheet. And I like to see how close I am to you guys. And again, just to test my observations.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like about what Ryan just said, and John, you could just expound upon this quickly, is the degree of confidence. Because it's one thing to say, hey, I like Green Bay, but I'm always wondering, what's your degree of confidence? Do you like this as a high confident, low confident, medium confident bet? So can you just talk a little bit more about the how someone can read or understand your level of confidence in a particular bet?
Well, a lot of times it's based on the unit size that we're putting in. So, and we've gone over what a unit is. We could, you could go back and look at that. But basically, the more units that someone's putting on, one of the coaches tells you to play, that's going to pretty much give you the amount of confidence that they have in that game. So their model, it's all based on value. So, and I do this more on money line type of bets. So as we get deeper into money line, like with golf and some other sports, when I do futures, things like that, you'll know just how much more confident I am in that play, just based on what I'm suggesting your units to play are. So yeah, you're getting that as well. Part of betting is not just picking the winners; it's knowing how much to bet and when to bet and things of that sort. So you're getting all that information. It's not just waking up on Saturday morning and, like the old days, you whip out the New York Post and say, okay, I like Penn State today. I like that. It's not that. We're working on these things all week long, trying to get you the best lines and trying to get you exactly how confident we are in those games.
I remember the New York Post, man. When I lived in New York City, that was the best thing ever. The New York Post, the headlines of the New York
Great
Post.
Headlines, right?
Yeah. All right, guys. So we did it again. Beat the Bookie podcast, episode 4. I urge you, if you haven't seen this podcast or video cast, go to the DFS Army podcast audio stream or our YouTube channel and check out previous episodes. We talk about these great topics at Fight On 2016.
It's
Ryan,
DFS _Fight On 2016.
Ooh, all right, good. So it's so that's a DFS Army. Are you talking about for Twitter or for the Slack?
For Twitter is
Okay.
DF. Oh, but on Slack, yes.
There you go. Fight On 2016. Ryan Besch, thank you for being a special guest. Hopefully we'll get you back in here more often for these conversations. I always like picking your brain. You are a very interesting fellow to you. And to my co-host and broadcasting partner, John Alesia at Statsational. Thank you again. Good luck with those contractors at your house. And remember, everybody, join DFS Army, beat the Bookie. Just click on the tab and become a better bettor. Talk to you later.